Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Professor Selinsky, for the intruding lecture, and thank you for the invitation to comment, and for Professor Kremnitzer for providing a base for my comment. So my comment, in my comments, I will elaborate on two issues discussed by Professor Selinsky with regard to the Palestinian minority in Israel. And the first is the criminal justice system in Israel, focusing on two topics. One is the crime right that you already mentioned in the Arab localities, and the second is the repression of freedom of speech of Palestinian citizens of Israel after the brutal attack of the 7th of October and following the devastating war on Gaza. The second issue is the Israeli democracy and the effect of this reality on the Palestinian community, on the Israeli democracy, on the essence of the Palestinian citizenship, an issue deeply connected, in my view, to the diminishing of democratic values in an era of populism. So my main insights are built on your arguments regarding the clear connection between democracy and criminal justice. And I would like to add another pillar to that, which is citizenship. And through the case of the Palestinian minority in Israel, I would like to demonstrate how criminal justice shapes and reshapes the citizenship of ethnic minorities in their daily lives, but also and perhaps especially in times of war and emergency. So before I start talking about the issue of criminal justice in Israel, I will start by an opening note that in addition to the two issues that I will discuss, that I will present here, the issue of crime and infringement of right to freedom of speech from the past 8 months, there are also daily encounters of the Palestinian minority in Israel with the enforcement system, whether it's the police or the enforcement system in general, as well as several landmark events which also manifest the issue of criminal justice, but due to time constraints, I will not address them. So as Professor Selinsky already noted shortly, the crime rates in the Palestinian society are considerably high. In fact, in 2023, the number of Palestinians murdered reached a peak, with a study revealing that relative to the population, the figure is even higher, is higher than in almost all OECD countries. And compared to the number of residents, Palestinians were murdered at a rate of 13 times higher than Jews last year from crime. This international comparison and the grim data highlights the severity of this issue. But actually, there is another, even more troubling issue, and this is the low percentage of charges filed in murder cases of Palestinians compared to Jewish citizens. So data provided by the police show that during 2023, the police submitted a total of 39 indictments to the court on charges of murder against 66 defendants. Of this, only 16 indictments were related to murder incidents within the Palestinian community. This figure is even more surprising considering Israel's advanced intelligence system and the fact that in most cases the offender is well known to the members of the community. This all might indicate that there is no intention on the part of the police to enforce law within the Palestinian community. Another new, very troubling phenomenon that has been intensified in the past decade is the demand for protection fees from business owners by crime families, causing many business owners to close their businesses. So in any case, this is the reality of daily insecurity in Palestinian cities and villages that is also crawling into the mixed cities and Jewish localities. But what is happening in times of war and emergency? So following the brutal events on the 7th of October, this feeling of insecurity was intensified, and like previous wars and emergency events, added another layer to the already complex reality in Israel. This is due to the wave of aggressive actions by the police forces, leading to widespread arrests, interrogations and detentions of Palestinian citizens of Israel, and in some cases also left Jewish activists who all shared contents on social media. So the framework of this authority is the instruction published by the State Attorney's Office regarding the initiation of investigations and arrests of those suspected of committing crimes of incitement and expressing identification with a terrorist organization following the Iran Sword War. So on October 19th, the Deputy State Attorney issued a letter clarifying the State's Attorney's position on this matter, and this is what follows. This is my translation of the guideline. So an investigation, and I'm quoting, an investigation must be open, prosecution initiated, and a request for the arrest until the end of legal proceedings against anyone who publishes word of identification with a terrorist organization or publishes word of praise, sympathy, encouragement, support, or identification with the atrocities committed against the citizens and soldiers of the State of Israel on October 7th, 2023, even if it is a single publication, provided that it is serious and directly related to the current period. I will get to this guideline in a minute. But despite the fact that there isn't any comprehensive research, empirical research on the effect of these guidelines, and I promise you I will do this research when I have the time to do it, I did manage to find data collected by Adala, the Legal Center for Palestinian Rights in Israel, and they show in their reports that under this guideline, which by the way is still effect until today, between October 7th and November 13, more than 170 individuals have been arrested and interrogated, resulting in about 76 indictments. Most of these arrests were based on social media posts. Another source that I found is an interview with the attorney in charge of the so-called Project for Offenses of Incitement under the State Attorney's Office. According to him, by March 2024, more than 150 indictments for offenses of incitement were filed for crimes of incitement. More than 150 incitement for offenses of incitements were filed. Just to compare, between January and September 2023, only 17 indictments were filed for crimes of incitement, and about 50 indictments in total were filed between 2020 and 2022. So although much more thorough research should be conducted here, I do have some initial insights from the cases that reached the court and from interviews that were conducted with people who were arrested. So as I mentioned before, the guideline for opening an investigation requires that the supporting statements and identification with the atrocities committed on October 7th are serious and directly related to the current period. So at first glance, it appears that many arrests did not adhere to this guideline in several levels. First of all, while some individuals who were arrested posted clear statements in favor of the attack, justifying Hamas's attack and celebrating it, others, especially following Israel's response, harsh response, one should say, shared concern for Palestinian victims by posting their names, their pictures, and expressing solidarity with the innocent victims in Gaza, some of whom are also Jews. So it seems that ambiguous statements have been enough to launch criminal prosecutions. Just to give you an example of these posts, so a university student posted a verse about being patient during hard times, were also arrested and investigated. Two activists in October from a Jewish Arab peace movement were detained for putting up posters with the message, Jews and Arab, we will get through this together. This sentence was found offensive by the police. Also, despite the clear guidelines regarding the requirement that the post should be directly related to the current period, some individuals were arrested for old posts that are totally not related to the current period and also do not seem inciting at all. Another example from the same student that was arrested for the verse he was also interrogated for a post that he posted a year ago of a picture of a boy sitting on the stairs of his house next to his cat that was killed by an Israeli rocket and hit his village. I will note another issue here that I think that should be also thoroughly investigated, which regards, at least according to the detainees, that they encountered insults and humiliation and torture of some level while they were detained. Another point is that there are no equivalent guidelines for opening investigations and arrests for incitements to genocide or for committing war crimes against innocent civilians. This point is even more crucial considering the massive incitements made by Jewish individuals. And the post from today of individuals celebrating the massacre in Rafah earlier last night is an example of that. So, Law for Palestine organization documented over 500 statements on social media made by public representatives, by military representatives, influential figures, journalists that can be categorized as incitement but were not prosecuted at all. This is despite the ICJ's call to take all measures to prevent and punish direct and public incitement to commit genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. Another very troubling point is the collaboration between the law enforcement system and private individuals, who de facto criminalizes Palestinians during this period. So most of the investigations that were motivated by private individuals who since October 7th took upon themselves to monitor Palestinians on social media and filing complaint to the police, who in most cases did not even hesitate to open investigations. This is even more concerning. Even more concerning is the role of the academic institution that played in this revenge journey. Not only did they criminalize students through internal disciplinary procedures and in some cases leading to expelling them, but some universities even submitted complaints against their own students to the police. These complaints were solely based on posts by Palestinians, while their Jewish friends, not so friends anymore, their Jewish students who posted inciting content were not subject to the same treatment. Another troubling point is what attorney from the state attorney's office proudly states in his interview, that they dictated the tone of the court. So according to him, and I'm quoting, in over 80% of the cases, arrests were approved until the end of the proceedings, and in others, release was granted under strict restrictive conditions. So it can be said that it was successful, their policy. The punishment policy we present to the court is also stricter compared to the past, and as a result, actual prison sentences were handed down, not just for a few months, but often more than 6 months. So what are the effects of all of these actions, other than they reinforce the already selective and discriminatory enforcement system? And this leads me to the second issue that I want to address here, regarding the Israeli democracy. What does that tell us about the Israeli democracy? So I will start with the high rise of homicide in Palestinian communities, together with the low rate of indictments and the number of murder cases solved, and the issue of protection fees, all in comparison to the Jewish society. So they further worsen the problem of criminal injustice. They undermine trust in the enforcement system. They reinforce the feeling of being second-class citizens. They contribute to a pervasive sense of insecurity where people are frightened to leave their houses and in some cases seek to migrate to other localities. These insights are deeply connected with the imperative security you talked about earlier, and you mentioned in your article as one of the pillars for advancing democratic pluralism, which Palestinian minority in Israel is lacking today. So another consequence of intensifying the criminal injustice and moving away from democratic pluralism is something that you already also mentioned before, is that it broadens the gaps between the different groups within the marginalized community, and this further worsen communal divisions. So criminal justice does not only contribute to the social fragmentation of the whole of society as a whole, but also affects social relations within the society. And what about the aftermath of October 7th? So the joint policy of the enforcement system, which includes the police and the Attorney General, along with the collaboration of the courts, and in some cases, as I mentioned before, the universities, has resulted in removing the checks and balances common in a democratic pluralist system. I'm finishing. Serious infringement on the rights to freedom of speech and freedom of demonstration for those who were arrested and detained. But beyond that, the evident infringement of freedom of speech, this policy has had and still has a chilling effect on all Palestinian citizens who are now in great fear of posting harmful contents, including myself, I must say, content expressing their solidarity for innocent victims or simply demanding a ceasefire. So this policy effectively infringes on the political rights of the Palestinian minority and further diminishes their already fractured sense of citizenship. This in turn leads far away from the concept of democratic pluralism, and one should keep in mind that the essence of democracy isn't only about having a theoretical right of freedom of practicing freedom of speech, but also the ability to in effect express and to use and exercise this right in everyday life with no fear. So the feeling of secure that you talked about earlier is not only about physical safety, but also about having the security to express one's feeling without fear of later being accused or detained. I will conclude that, in my view, the true crisis, if we connect to the title of this meeting, the true crisis of democracy in Israel today is when a call for peace and solidarity with innocent victims becomes a felony. Thank you.